Today's interview is with Ren Waring, 1973 New Zealand Spearfishing champion. And we're in Fiordland together having a quiet moment while some of the boys are off diving. And I just thought I'd ask Ren about his long, illustrious spearfishing and dive career as such. And Ren's a bit of an icon in the sport, even though he probably doesn't think it himself and probably won't say, but he's one of the guys that sort of pioneered a bit of stuff back in the old days and whatnot, and he's also got kids that are into the sport and things, so one of the famous... Were you a reef comber originally? Was that where you started, with a reef comber club?
That's the first club I joined,
yeah.
Well, yes.
And now you're with the Neptunes, are you?
The Dolphins.
Dolphins,
Right.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
Is the reef comber still going?
No, the reef combers folded up. They all sort of got their own boats and all went their own separate ways, and ended up... we just had one whacking big party and wound the club up. And
Oh, did you?
Yeah,
it
was such a good party. We had another one the next year, just to use all the funds up. So so.
But like, if you look back over the old trophies, the reef combers feature lots on them.
Yeah.
They were a pretty strong club, weren't they?
They're a very strong spearfishing club in their day. Yes, certainly were. They had, I think, about 4 New Zealand champions. It was Jim Thornbury and Dave Barnett and. Who was the other one?
Probably my old man might have been.
Oh, of course, Dave Shields. Yeah. And myself.
Yeah. And so when did you start spearfishing?
Around about 68, and what actually happened is I used to watch my neighbour come in, and he had all this blood flowing down his drive, and so I hopped over to see what was going on, and here's this, he's gutting kingfish on his drive. And so I got friendly with him, and he said to me, look, what say we hop out after work, and we'll have a fish, which I used to do, and then I'll have a dive. Well, I soon saw the light. He dived underneath the Rangitoto lighthouse, and he got a huge sack of crays, and he regularly went there, and that's how close the clays were to Auckland.
So under the Rangitoto lighthouse,
yeah.
There you go. There's crays there.
So I got converted then.
Yeah. And who was that?
That was Jeff Clay.
Oh, that was Jeff Clay.
Yeah,
so
Jeff's members of the reef combers.
Right. So is Jeff still diving?
Yeah, just snorkeling now.
Yeah. So that's how you got going. So that's 68. We're now 2016. So that's the time Ren's been diving. So what's that? A quick calculation. That's 32. That's 42. 48 years. Does that sound right?
Yep. Something like that.
About 48 years or something Ren's been
Yeah.
diving for. And where were you when you won the national spearfishing champs? I'll just turn this radio down.
Wettie in the Bay of Islands.
Yeah.
And it was run out of the motor camp there.
Oh yeah.
And
was that in the dinghy days when you rode boats?
no, oh God, no.
That was after.
No,
After
it was into runabouts, but it was in the days when you could shoot any number of fish over 15 £.
Right.
And
any sort of fish.
Yeah, any sort of fish. Yeah.
As long
but
as
it
was
still,
over 15.
Still a sort of a species competition, but anything over 15 £. So I was lucky enough to get into a school of big, well not big, medium-sized kingfish, and I got about 6. So
6 kingies.
So that got me going.
Whereas these days we're only allowed to weigh in 1 in some comps, 2 in others. But yeah. So you could shoot as many as you wanted then.
Over that weight. Yeah.
And do you think that there was a lot more fish in those days than there are nowadays?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, nowadays the kingfish are, what I notice, the kingfish are tiny. There's so many we see, and they're under the limit. So they're just, that's the way it's gone.
So the moving baseline, as they call it, you're still seeing a reasonable number of kingies at times, but they're all very small compared to what they were.
That'll be right.
Those big fish aren't there.
Yeah.
What's the biggest kingie you've ever speared?
Nothing really big. 66 £. Was my biggest.
Yeah.
But my son soon eclipsed that. He got 182. So
I think I might have been there with him when he got that at the Chicks.
My son Barry.
Many years ago. Yeah. 82 £. Yeah. I remember that. I've got a photo of it.
Yeah.
And what about snapper? Have you shot a lot of snapper over the years?
Yeah, I love shooting snapper. That's the main thing I love getting is a snapper. And my biggest snapper was 25 £. But I've had 2 or 3 that size.
Mm-hmm.
And I find the snapper a real challenge more than anything because it's just fun stalking them.
Yeah. That certainly tests you as a Spearo.
Yeah.
But once you learn the skill, it's it's a nice skill to have because it's all shallow, it's all calm water you want to find to get them, and you can keep doing it.
Yep.
Now, if I can ask you a personal question, how old are you now?
Nearly 75.
So 75, and Ren and I are currently in Fiordland, and he's out snorkeling with us the other day, catching big crays and shooting fish and things like that. And that's the beauty of the sport, is age is not really a barrier. If you look after yourself, you can start young, and here's Ren at 75 in Fiordland with a whole lot of guys and still doing it, and scuba diving and checking things out. So it's pretty amazing from that point of view. I suppose if there's another question to ask you is, have you got a memory of a particular fish you got or a particular dive that stands out in your career? Is there one of those moments that you go, doesn't get much better than that?
Not really. Well, a particular dive really, if I thought was the best, was actually diving with the whales at Vauval.
Oh, in Tonga.
Yeah. And having, a baby whale, they were just below us, and next thing the baby came up, and it came right alongside me, and I was virtually touching it. Well, I was touching it, and it went past, and it was still as big as a motor car or bigger.
Yeah.
And that was just incredible. But
so, as a career as a spearfisherman, your best moment is actually not actually shooting and killing something. So, as a spearfisherman, we all appreciate everything about the ocean, not just the fact we're going out and shooting and killing stuff. It's about everything else that goes on around it.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, like I love seeing manta rays and whale sharks and things like that.
Yeah.
I was at the Three Kings, and I just shot a kingfish, and I was all tangled up in my line, and this chap Alan Warner came along, and he was helping untangle me, and the dinghy came up, and we looked, and just behind him, my eyes just about fell out. There was just a huge mouth about this wide, and I pointed at it. I couldn't even speak, and he swung around, and it turned out to be a whale shark. Had come up to see what was going on, and it was only about a metre from us with his mouth open.
Just feeding.
And and Derek was in the boat. He just about collapsed looking, but anyhow, it turned around and swam off. But it's things like that are just amazing.
Yeah. And obviously some of the characters you meet along the way, and lifetime friendships of guys. And
well, I mean, now I'm still regularly going out with Jeff Clay fishing. And I've known him for so long. It's great. I mean, it's the comradeship and doing the same sport together, isn't it?
Yeah, there's something that you both love doing.
Yeah.
And can keep doing it to this older age and whatnot.
That's true.
And the good thing about the older age and coming away with younger guys is guys like me, we learn from guys like you, because there's not much you haven't seen or done really when it comes to the sport. So
the main thing I like is just to be able to keep up with them and still do it.
Well, you certainly did that the other day. I can attest to that. I watched what you're doing, and you certainly haven't lost many of those skills, and you were doing really well. So, and have you got a favourite dive spot in New Zealand?
Well, we regularly go to Matai Bay, and we've been out to the shallow patch, and Derek Pollard found this pinnacle, and it comes up out of about 130 feet of water, and it's vertical, but all down around the base are big caves, and living in those caves when we first found it were harp hooker, and they were mainly up to about 40 pound, and unfortunately they were out of our snorkeling depth, but we did shoot some scuba diving, but it was just great, just incredibly great to see. And there's giant schools of golden snapper all around that rock, and then higher up on it it's just chocker with pink mau mau. And the other thing, there was a big school of resident onihau lived there.
Right, the bluefish.
The bluefish. There would have been 20 of them, I reckon.
So how many harp hooker would you see on a dive? Say, like what's the most you think you saw when you found?
Probably about half a dozen.
Half a dozen.
And they were down there in and out of the caves, and I remember when they swam off, you could hear their tails beating in the water as they went away, making a thumping sound.
So over what period could you still shoot those? Did you only see them 1 year, or were they there for a few years?
No, they were there for probably about 4 years, and then they gradually disappeared.
Yeah.
And
they disappeared into your boats, you mean?
No, not really, because we didn't really shoot many. But what happened is the commercial longliners got in there and started longlining the whole area, and it just gradually got worse and worse. So I mean, you wouldn't definitely be lucky to see a harpooker there now. We haven't seen one for years. So.
Yeah. Yeah, and what about in the Hauraki Gulf? So you said about the craze at Rangitoto,
Yeah.
and you mentioned something to me the other day. I can't remember about Waiheke Beach and Tor Bay on the North Shore. Did you say something about diving out there?
No, I haven't really dived off there. No.
Yeah.
But I've dived flat rock, and I mean we had.
Oh, it was Flat Rock. You were talking
Yeah.
about the Golden Snapper.
That's right. We had a lovely tunnel and an arch off Flat Rock, and it was. You'd go down there, it was just beautiful. I mean, the current was going through, and there'd be half a dozen golden snapper, and they were big golden snapper. They weren't little,
Yeah.
they were real big solitary
Yeah.
ones. And also the boarfish in there. I mean, might be 4 or 5, half a dozen boarfish live there
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
And you could go down every time they'd be there.
Mm.
And now we go down there, and there's none of those there.
All gone.
They're all gone. Occasionally we see a school or a group of big blue moki, but those ones are definitely gone.
Gone, eh? Did you see Golden Snapper closer than that anywhere?
No.
No, not you
No.
remember, yeah.
Not that I can think of.
Yeah, and you were telling me, that's the thing you were telling me, and it wasn't Waiheke Beach, it was Waiheke, about all the big crays in the old days.
Oh, right, yeah. What happened is that fish finders hadn't been invented, and then they came in with the old marlin fish finder, which had a turning disc on it with styluses, which marked on a paper chart. And Jeff and I thought, well, we've got to get one of these. So we got one, and we started going down Waiheke. And we found that off beaches like Onatangi and Onuroa, there'd be reefs that no one knew about. And when we hopped in there, they were crawling with big crays. Obviously, we were the first ones to dive it.
Yeah.
And they were just crawling. And we took a lot of big crays off there, real big crays.
So you're talking 6, 7, 8 pound red crays?
Yeah.
All over the place?
Yeah, they looked nearly as big as what we're getting here. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's turn that down.
Yeah. So,
but now you have to measure anything you find pretty much, don't you, in those sort of places, if you find one.
Yeah, well now you just don't find them like that.
Yeah.
We've still had spots that have been really good, and I had a spot that I'd go to, and I'd only go there once or twice a year, and I'd take just a certain number of crays off it, and all of a sudden they're all gone. And all I can think is a very hard place to find, but someone else had found it. So.
Yeah, right.
And they've stripped it.
And stripped the thing bare.
So it's empty now.
So this is a common theme. I've done other interviews with some of the other old divers, and they've said the same thing, is about farming a spot. If you find a spot with lots of crays, don't take every one. Take a few of them and leave some there, and others will stop in, and there'll always be a population. But if you clean it out, that's often a spot will die for good.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's it, right. Yeah.
It's a common thread all the way through these interviews, is the fish stocks are declining rapidly, and that there's a lot we'll never ever see what we saw in the past, and it's a bit of a lesson for the young and up and coming divers. Don't strip and rape and pillage your spots, because with the growth of population and fish finders and fancy boats, the fish are like, what's it going to be like in another 50 years?
Yeah, well, it's fish finders, of course, that really help divers now. They can go back, they find a good spot, and they can go back, and they can go to within a couple of metres of it, and down they go, and they're right on it.
Because in your day it was, well, if you didn't have the digital print-out sounders, it was draw a picture of the hill and the tree lining up with it and all that sort of stuff, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, we've got our little mark books, and if we found a good space here, we'd write everything down, but it's not nearly as efficient now as what they do now.
Do you still have those books?
No, I couldn't find mine. I know Jeff's got his.
Yeah.
So
it'll be interesting to flash that in front of a camera, not to show the spots, but just to show how it was done.
Yeah, well, I've got the back of my chart, and I got all stuff written all over my chart.
Yeah.
And with all different marks and bearings. And
God, if you put that up on Trade Me Ren, you could get millions for that.
Yeah, well, I keep saying to some of my mates that have stopped diving, how about your mark book? I'd like it. Yeah.
No,
But they, even though they're not diving, they don't want to give it away.
Yeah.
For some reason.
Yeah. And the other thing you've done is a bit of wreck diving and things too over the years. And
yeah, I got into going up, and I did 13 trips up and dived at the Three Kings and dived the Lingamite.
Yeah.
First one with Kelly Tarleton, and managed to collect you know, quite a few coins, well, a few coins.
Yeah.
And
Did you get any gold ones?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've got gold ones. In fact, I'm currently getting a jeweler's making up 2 pendants out of these gold coins, and they're for my grandchildren, my granddaughters.
Yeah.
And we're going to give them to them when they're 21.
Right. Yeah.
But my wife's got one, and I also, when I did get them, if my buddy didn't get one, I'd give one to my buddy too. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, I see those on my buddy's wives, you know.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that sort of stuff is incredible to be able to have that sort of history and keep it forever and keep it in the family.
Yeah, that's right. Another thing I got into, which was quite a thing in its heyday, when the reef combers started, is it was too rough. We'd go and dive around the old wharves in the Auckland Harbour, and there were bottles there that were over anything between 100 and 120 years old. The old bottles with the marble in them, or the torpedo bottles, or the ginger beer bottles, which are still very, very collectible. And initially, places like Mansion House, they were just lying all around the wharf, so we had a field day picking them up.
Yeah.
And it became quite a branch of the hobby for us divers.
Yeah.
And we'd search the old charts for either for old wharfs or for places where the boats are moored and dive those areas.
Yeah.
So that was great fun. But I really feel we were in the heyday of things like that, and particularly the spearfishing, when no one had done it.
That's what I say, you guys were sort of the pioneers of it in a way, and discovered things and made things that we've sort of continued on with into this era of divers and into the future, I suppose.
Yeah, well, I mean, we all made our own spear guns, of course. And initially it wasn't rubber guns, and when the rubber spear guns came in, that was really great.
Yeah.
It far better than any spring or compressed air gun. One weekend I went away onto White Island, and there were other clubs there. I know there was Cook Strait Divers and another club, and the New Zealand Spearfishing record was broken 3 times in that weekend by different divers, and I think it got up to £96 that
Was
time.
that at the Kings?
No, that was at White Island.
Oh, White Island, sorry, White Island, yeah.
And at the Kings, when Alan Langton got his New Zealand record, I'm not sure whether it's still a record.
No, it's been broken.
He was getting swept into a narrow gut there with a tide racing through it, which was going to take him away, and I managed to get in with a dinghy and get his king aboard. So.
Oh, so you were there for Alan Langton's record?
Oh, I pulled in the boat, yeah.
Did you?
Yeah.
So that was £106 or something?
£106,
yeah. That stood for years and years. It's only broken, I think, in 2014. I think it was broken.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, you've lived a great era of spearfishing and whatnot, and you've been a great diver and still are a great diver, and it's great to get this interview off you, and for the youngsters who hopefully will watch this and learn a bit from it and understand what it was like. It's much appreciated.
Well, like I said, I really appreciate the fact that I got in the heyday of when things were just as they originally were, and I guess modern spearfishing and fishing techniques have stripped out a lot of the fish.
Yeah. If one of the things doing these interviews, talking to you older guys, is the fish that have been shot, say, in my spearfishing career, especially in the last 20 years, there's been a lot more bigger fish shot. There's probably been a lot less fish shot, but a lot more bigger fish, which would indicate knowledge, better gear, better ability to get out there and do it. And these guys are pulling the last of those big fish. I've been one of them, out of the water, because we've had the ability to be able to do it more so than you guys. So that's certainly one thing I've learned. I thought you guys all shot huge fish all the time, but it's very evident you didn't.
No, I guess not, no.
Yeah, and I think that's what gear and knowledge has done for us. Made it easier for us.
Well, but also, of course, the modern divers are exceptionally deep divers and very skilled at
and that's knowledge that's done it, I suppose, what we've learnt from the older divers and things. So no, it certainly does not bode well for the future for fish stocks and for bigger fish, that's for sure. So I'm an advocate for sort of looking after what we've got left and and ensuring that people in the future can sort of do in a way what we've all done.
Yeah, yeah. Well, hopefully they'll, they won't slaughter too many of the fish, and there'll still be, good examples for us to go and look at.
Here in Fiordland's a good example of that. Not many people get here, so the
Yeah.
crayfish stocks especially are unbelievable.
Yeah, well,
Like-
for me to come here and see the crays as they are, I mean, it's just great. You just snorkel along in the shallows, and in 10 feet of water there'll be huge crayfish there, monsters, which
Everywhere.
all over the place.
Yeah. And I mean, the boat's got a strict rule: no female crays on board, and you're only allowed your 6 crays to take home. And we're not eating a lot of crayfish, so I don't think we've caught a crayfish for 3 days. We've just been looking at them. So we're doing what we can to ensure that it's here for everybody else to see.
Yeah,
So
fair enough.
yeah, so that's great. That's Ren Waring, New Zealand Spearfishing Champion in 1973. Another spearfishing legend from New Zealand.